Hello, everyone. We're back for another episode. My name is Gregory Q. Jenkins, and this is the Quintasia Podcast. Now, from time to time, point of privilege, I've had several people on the podcast from different, I'm trying to figure out the right word I want to say here, from different walks of life is not what I want to say, but from different parts of my life. Don't you be laughing over there. From different parts of my life, and it's been a pleasure and an honor to interview these people. Now, my guest today, this gentleman, I definitely wanted to get him on the podcast because we talk about film, entertainment, social justice, all that stuff all the time. So. Point of disclosure, this person is my best friend. Sorry, I don't have really good taste in people, but
ditto.
And we've literally known each other all our lives. I think I referenced Gary at some point during the different podcasts. I know I did because his parents and my parents were best friends. So that's how, our families came together. And so it is a privilege and pleasure to welcome to the podcast, Gary Keys. How are you, sir?
Thank you so much, my friend. I use that term lightly, too. So
yes, he's not kidding.
Don't get used to that.
So just to set the stage, ladies and gentlemen, so you understand what you're in for today. This is going to be the Black version of Two Grumpy Old Men.
I thought maybe you would be the two old men from the Muppet Show in the balcony.
That too. So either one of those parallels, you can take that, and that's what you're in for today. Mm-hmm. So why don't we get started and let's dive right in and see where this conversation takes us. I want to talk about, a topic that I hear a lot, even in your household, because also his niece, ladies and gentlemen, we've had her on this podcast, Ms. Tiana Colbert. She's been on here. And I'm going to think it's safe to say that Tiana has probably a different opinion or a different feel about physically going to the movie theaters than Gary and I do.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let's talk about the streaming experience versus the theater experience. What's your preference?
Oh, my preference will always be, until my dying day, will be the theater. Going into the movie theater.
And why is that?
Well, let's be honest. Even though streaming is very, is very convenient. How can you beat wanting to see a movie in your underwear, your slippers, sitting on your couch with food, your own food. You don't have to drive to where to a movie theater. You don't have to do that much planning. It's like watching regular television. Except it's a movie. And that's convenient. That's fun. But the real experience of being immersed in a story that some filmmaker has done and has put their blood, sweat, and tears, even if it's not that, even if it's a tentpole movie, made by Disney or whatever, you cannot beat that experience, being around other people and being connected in that way. And are we sharing the same feelings? Are we picking up the same vibes from this character? Do we, as one whole group, are we actually do we actually know what's going to happen next at the same time? You can't beat that. I mean, streaming is great. It'll be here forever, I'm assuming. But you can't beat the theater experience. It's just too phenomenal. It dates back to when we were all in caves together and we were sharing, around a pit fire, and we had one older, one older senior cave person, that'd be me, who would tell an old story, and everybody would gather around and listen to that, and take that all in, and they all ooh ah ooh, other than going ooga booga, but they all be able to, pick that up, and that's the same thing. That is definitely the same experience. You can't beat that. You just can't.
Right. Well, I 100% agree with you. There's that, and I happen to, and I'm gonna go further than that. I'm gonna make a prediction
Mm,
because I think one of the things that technology has broken us in some sort of ways.
yeah,
Even though in terms of connectedness, you can have a Zoom with anyone anywhere in the world
yeah,
at any time as long as you both have an internet connection.
yeah,
Um, Despite that, I think we see it, and it's not just in our country, record levels of loneliness and depression. So I think that you will. I don't think the era of, there's a lot of people who are predicting the death of movie theaters.
mm,
I say no.
mm-hmm,
I can understand, and I am friends with some people who are from the disability community, and
yeah,
who I can understand their point of view that because these theaters are mostly not um, hospitable to them,
yeah,
streaming
yeah,
actually is a useful option. And
mm-hmm,
I'm not like you. I don't think streaming is going away. But one thing is for sure, streaming as we now know it has to change because there's only one, maybe now two of all of the streamers that are profitable. And that's the
yeah.
dirty little secret. And we'll
That's true.
talk a little bit
Right.
more about
Exactly.
that a little
Yeah.
later. But the point that I'm making now is I think because we as human beings still have a need for human connection,
Yeah.
going to the movie theater, like you said, I think the key part of that, what you said, is having a whole bunch of people experiencing the same
Together.
thing at
Right.
the same time.
Right.
That's easy now to start up conversations with people you don't know because
Right.
you all just experienced the same thing.
The same, absolute same. Well, I even just saw a recent. I think it was a recent report on Al Jazeera where they were reporting um, the low birth rate numbers that Japan is actually worried for. And in the report, they stated that a lot of the youth are not getting married because they're not meeting each other. They're living. If you look at their homes, their apartments, everything is in the apartment. A lot of that also stems also from them, working very long hours and everything, obviously. But also the level amount of socialization is really, really low in Japan, and they're not meeting each other. Everything that they would do normally um, in a social situation, going on a date or have you, going to dinner, going to the movie theater, going to movies, they're not doing. They're doing it at home. Everything is around them. Their food, their entertainment, where they sleep, and everything. It's one of the things that their government believes is actually partly responsible for their low birth rates right now, and their marriage numbers too are very low too. So That's I mean that's an extensive problem. That's a really that's a dangerous problem. Actually, you don't want your numbers too low, in your population. But you can see where that is almost the same thing what you were referring to. That's why going to the movie theater is just an experience you won't be able to change. You won't be able to, and you shouldn't be. You want to socialize with other human beings. We're social animals. How can we not want to be around each other? As much as we want to, knock each other off all the time, we need one another. We need to
Yes.
talk to one another. We need to know what the other person is thinking, and have you. And that's helpful. That to me that empowers a society. It doesn't make it weaker. So um, once again, going back, making full circles, movie theaters are not going anywhere, in my opinion.
I totally agree with that. And for those of you who are, happy about the death of movie theaters, I would say I,
Too bad.
I don't share your outlook. I do
Mm-mm.
think what is rapidly changing, and obviously I want to be a part of that change, is the content. And
Mm,
if you want to get people, if you want to get butts in the seats, you've got to get content that are going to appeal to those butts.
exactly.
And the demographic makeup of this country has shifted radically.
Exactly. Yes.
And I understand when the average picture now costs somewhere in the neighborhood, according to Studio Binder, about $65 million. Um, you get in a defensive mode because that's a lot of money. Like, oh man. So you're not risk taking anymore. You just want to wash, rinse, and repeat. And
Mm,
just kind of, so you get, Superman 52,
mm,
or Spider-Man 97, or whatever numbers were up,
right. No, it's
and things
true.
like
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
and those movies are great and they're fun, but we want to see something beyond that. I mean, we don't really need the 90-second reimagining of the origin story of Spider-Man.
Exactly.
We got it.
Exactly.
Even
Exactly.
if you're not a comic book fan, I think at this point now, you got it. You
You
got
got right.
Flintfire,
You understand what's
Radioactive
going
Spider.
on.
We got it. So, eventually you have to move on. And fortunately, there's a treasure trove of stories that haven't been tapped yet.
Mm,
That's what I'm trying to do, is tap
hmm.
those stories, because
I
I
mean,
believe.
how many films, how many biofilms even can be made of? I was thinking about this the other day, of Elvis Presley. We've had a numerous amount of films. Yeah, you could rattle them off. The most recent one was with Austin Butler.
Right.
It was a good performance and what have you. It was an okay film, in my opinion. But where is the film about Little Richard? Who, to me, if you know his history in music and what have you, is actually the true creator of, who's the real king of rock and roll. Where is his bio picture?
I think there is one in the works. I think
Well,
there
that's
is one.
that's great. Yeah, if that's true, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But as you said a few seconds ago, there's an endless amount of stories that we don't know that, and
Exactly.
yeah, it's going studio, Hollywood. Yeah, it's going to take some money. Yeah, that's the reason why Oppenheimer was a hit, because it was a very interesting story by a very interesting man during a very interesting time in the history of this country. You
Right.
know, they had no clue that the nuclear weapons would go off in one area. There was a potential that it could ignite the
Hmm.
atmosphere and kill everyone.
Yep.
They didn't know that. It was a gamble. They did the math. Anybody who knows the story, they did the mathematics. They did the science. Said, okay, it should just explode. It shouldn't vaporize the planet. You know, but that to me, that's a very interesting story. And he ended up being very anti-war.
Yes.
So those are stories we need. Especially
Yeah.
coming from our side of it. There's so many people, African American people who did things that none of us knew. The things we take advantage of, the everyday things that we use in our lives were created by African Americans, and who have rich stories, and we don't know any of it. And that, to me, that's not shame. That's a crime, in my
Right.
opinion. You know.
And along those lines, of story, and I'm so happy that the story was told. Like,
Mm,
the story of Bayard Rustin.
mm,
And people, if you haven't seen that the movie, it's on Netflix. You that's a must see.
absolutely,
And I
absolutely.
was, like Tom Hanks' reaction to The Watchmen, the opening scene in the pilot episode, and he's like, "No one ever taught me, about this
Tulsa,
incident that
Tulsa,
happened
right?
in
Massacre, right?
Tulsa, the Tulsa riots,
Exactly.
and I'm right up there. I didn't, I knew by the time that episode aired, I knew about it, but I don't want to get into that one. Let's stick with Bayard Rustin. Um, and I went to an elementary school that they taught us about civil rights leaders. I mean, it was a big thing. They
Mm,
never taught me about Bayard Rustin, never,
mm-hmm,
and I know
mm-hmm.
why. I know why, because he did not fit the narrative.
Exactly,
And
exactly.
but think about the importance. I mean, I can't stress this enough. When we don't, you've heard me give this speech many times. In the entertainment business, we're not making widgets here. This is we cast a big shadow,
Mm, yeah,
and representation means so much,
it does.
and it's so powerful. Imagine if you were a member of the LGBTQ plus community, and then you come across the story of Bayard Rustin,
Mm-hmm.
who was an openly gay man
Openly, right? Exactly.
in in the civil rights era, the
Mm-hmm.
1950s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. And he was the key architect of the March on Washington,
That's right.
the bus boycotts, all of that. And he has been largely left out of history. But the true fact of it is that he was openly embraced, maybe
Mm-hmm.
not initially, but ultimately they got to that point by Dr. Martin Luther King. And why is that important? Because here's a man that's a reverend
Mm-hmm.
that according to and he, according to his theology, this is a man that you wouldn't think that he would be friends with.
Exactly, right.
But he openly embraced that person and the character of that person. Think of what that says to a person from the LGBTQ community.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, I'm seeing, we're, we can have an impact. That's the story that, man, did that need to be told. And I should have known about him. I'm mad that, I was never really,
Well, that's
never
not
mentioned at
that's
all.
not your fault. That's not my fault. That's not your fault. Um, that is the fault of the nation. That's the fault of the country, where you have these great people um, who did so much for us, but because they were not part of the quote unquote normal side of the community, that the story is somehow submerged, or just or we don't talk about that. We thank the person, but we don't talk about that person or what have you. There, Russell is not alone in that. There's so many people in the civil rights movement, whose stories we don't know because of who they were as people, and that can extend not only to African Americans but to indigenous people. Stories that we that we should know, that should be part of our social studies growing up.
Mhm.
As we know about the Revolutionary War, we should know about these people. Everything about
Absolutely.
them and how they really fully shaped the society we're living in currently. Because a lot of what we take it granted for our everyday individual freedoms are because of the sacrifices of people like him, and others that we
Absolutely.
don't know and we should know them. You
We
know,
definitely, he deserves to be remembered, and
absolutely,
he deserves our
absolutely,
respect.
yeah.
And
He shouldn't be a name. He shouldn't be a name on even on the side of a school or a street in Harlem, and the general population don't know who that is. Who is that person? Who is that person? And you have that a lot in the country. You have signposts, especially in the South, of Black people who've done things, but we don't know who they are. Who are
right.
they? Why don't we know who they are? You know.
And it's because we like to cherry pick things in history, depending
Mm.
upon the perspective of the person writing the history.
Exactly.
And because he was my theory, and I think it's pretty much borne out by the facts. Because he was gay,
Mm-hmm.
because that went quote against the mainstream of the people we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
he was just kind of glossed over. But
Right.
I think it represents a very powerful point. These are not um, this is normal. Having gay people have been a part of our society forever, and
From day one. Right.
regardless of your religious beliefs, the presence of gay people have been here for forever.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I think we all need to learn, we can have different religions, we can have different points of perspective, but we all need to have grace
Mm.
and to allow for other belief systems, other whatever that may not comport to our own, but
Exactly.
allow every human being the right to go and you know live and love as they see fit
Mm-hmm.
without us importing our belief
Belief
systems,
systems on them.
our
Right.
cultural
Exactly.
knowledge upon to them, and just
Right.
acknowledge their existence and enjoy the human being in your presence.
Exactly. It can
Um,
only having them be part of uh, society and being known to everyone can only enrich the culture. It doesn't take it away. It doesn't weaken it. It just enriches it. To me, in my opinion. So
fear is never something that is going to enhance
no,
society.
it doesn't. It
The,
doesn't.
the, there's no good that comes from fear,
No, absolutely not.
and
Nope.
and that's how we will get in trouble is if we try to go through history and take out the parts of history that we don't like
Mm-hmm.
to suit our narrative. Now
Mm-hmm.
that's not new. Human beings have been doing that forever, but we have to. I think we should be far enough along in human history where we understand now the dangers of doing that. And
Mm-hmm.
we personally, everyone has to invest in, well, I want to make sure that I'm getting the whole picture, not just someone's particular perspective
Or a
of
diluted version of it too. You
exactly.
know, that doesn't do anything. You
Right.
know, but no, I agree with you with that. Uh, uh, it's we've seen this story before where societies attempt to do that. One of the first signs of that you could tell is when they begin to burn books, because books say something that they disagree with, or the author happens to be of a particular uh, gender, or 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 sexuality, and all of a sudden, works that would add to the strength of the culture of the society is now considered something that can be burned, you know, and that's that loss. A loss of great knowledge is will always do, and societies you see that do that eventually do go the way of the dinosaur. They do. I mean, it takes time, but they do eventually fall away. You know, um, uh, we can't as a civilization we can't. There's no way in the world we can move forward. By denying half of our population because they see the world differently, or they love differently, or they believe differently. You can't. Civilization will not go forward that long.
You would
We
have
just
think
won't
we would have
survive.
you would have think we would have learned that lesson by
You
now.
would think so, and I think I think we are. It's slow. Evolution is slow. Evolution doesn't go by our time. Evolution is slow. Hopefully, we'll learn. We'll get better at it. That's the goal. That's the reason why going full circle again back to what you're saying. And this sounds like we're going all the way in a different direction, but there is something about having film, especially film as an art form, that can not only enrich, but it can also educate too. You know, and that's the reason why I wholeheartedly agree with you that we need more films about subjects like Resident and other people who we don't know, that added something to us as a people. I think we have to I think we have to almost like slowly turn the dial a bit. And me, Gregory. I'm an old sci-fi fan. I like comics and superheroes and what have you. But we need more stories about more real people. You can't, I can't, we really can't that much have anything in common with Batman. We're not billionaires. We don't fly
Yeah.
around at night, smashing criminals over the head, what have you. But we can understand a person whose people are being trampled on for their land. You know what I'm saying? We can relate to that. You know, uh, uh, that and within other stories as well of people who are oppressed, or people who grew up impoverished but have a great idea, and through their own will and tenacity, they end up, you know, being adding something to the population and to their community.
Yeah.
Like Madam C.J. Walker, someone like
Hmm.
that. Who did so much for the Black community and what have you. And those are the stories we need to see more of. Those are the ones that'll challenge us. As individual human beings, say, okay, he did something and they're not superheroes. There's something that I can do. There's something I can reach for, and something I can apply to my own life, everything. And that's why they're really an influence on us more than Spider-Man,
And,
actually. As much
and
as I like Spider-Man.
I'll say this point, and then I'll pivot to the next topic. Because you mentioned Madam C.J. Walker, but like if those of you who are watching and or listening to this, if you don't know who Madam C.J. Walker is, go look her up
Mm-hmm.
because this was a Black woman who became a millionaire in the
Exactly.
1920s.
Exactly. Yeah.
I
Exactly.
mean, I'm going to say that again. 1920s,
Yes.
this
Yes.
person did this. And
Yes. They were still openly lynching Black people.
yes, so
Yeah.
she was both, Black
Yeah.
and a woman,
Yes.
and managed to get to that level. So now I know that there's been, lots of attempts, and I think were a couple of projects that made it to the screen, I believe, but I think they're still trying to come up with the definitive project. And I might be wrong on that, but
Yeah.
maybe. it already was made and I wasn't, I missed it. But so don't send me angry letters if I missed it, folks. Because I know that Oprah was trying to tell that story for the longest time, but I'm not aware of where that project stands. But
Yeah,
anyway, that's a perfect example of something that a story that I think it doesn't matter what color you are or what your background is. It's a story about an
it is.
amazing being.
It is.
So to pivot to a slightly lighter note, what was the first movie you fell in love with?
Oh boy. Well, I was going to say something. I'm thinking right now of something. That a lover of world cinema would choose. When asked that question. It'd be some sort of a wide and eclectic sort of film or something, some deep, uh, some deep socially conscious film or something like that, or the filmmaker would be, someone like maybe Orson Welles or perhaps Melvin Van Peebles or someone like that, that wide spectrum of people. But no, it's for me, speaking for me, just for me, it was that one crazy little film in 1977 called Star Wars. And the reason why I used Star Wars: A New Hope by George Lucas is because before then, um, I accepted film. I watched movies and I loved movies and what have you, and being very young and what have you. But I had no clue what was really behind a film. How it was made, how it was written. I didn't even know films were written. To be perfectly honest, before 1976, I didn't know what a script was. Or what does a producer do, or even when you see at the end of the film it says directed by. I had no clue what directed by meant. I just I was a kid, what have you. I have to be honest. Mr. Lucas opened that world up for a lot of us. I'm sure you agree because we're basically the same generation. The first time I learned is through specials and stories and behind the scenes on how the film was made and the music and how it was shot. What a Panavision camera was. All of a sudden, these things came to me, and it. Not, I'm talking only about right now. I'm just talking about the technical side, but it's also. I think I have to give credit. I have to give it to Star Wars. Star Wars was the one that sort of opened me up emotionally to film. Before Star Wars, I took in film. I took it in. Ooh, whether it was scary or whether it was action filled, what have you. But where it moved me emotionally, as silly and off kilter the story was, it moved me. Um, and I'm confident to say I know I'm not alone in that. At least two
Well,
generations.
that I'm going to cheat and I'm going to give
Mhm.
two answers. The first choice is the same as yours because I have to be honest. The first movie that I saw in the theater that
Mhm.
really I fell in love with was unquestionably Star Wars.
Yeah.
I was no passionate lover of film
Hmm.
until I saw Star Wars.
Yeah.
Star Wars completely ignited my imagination,
Hmm.
and Star Wars um whether you, and I know that there are a lot of sci-fi people who, oh, well, I should say non-sci-fi people
No,
who
it's not
maybe
people.
you consider Star Wars not a serious movie
Right.
because it is sci-fi. But when we look at, the art of storytelling and the art of understanding archetypes
Mm.
and how they play out in a story, it's a perfect example
Yeah.
of, you know, the classic story arc that you
Hmm.
would have, a classic protagonist, a classic
Hmm.
antagonist, the hero's journey.
Yeah.
That start,
Can't love's a hero with a thousand faces. Yeah,
you
exactly.
you 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 definitely see that, in that first film. I'm sorry, I'm old school. I don't call it Star Wars: A New Hope because when it came out, it was Star Wars. The very first Star Wars,
Right.
and you have all of that in there, and plus you just had special effects that did not exist
Hmm.
for that movie. They
Yeah.
created an entire company to create the effects. Something what they did with motion cameras
Yeah.
was
Exactly. Yeah.
simply amazing.
Yeah.
So that's first my answer, and then but the first movie that this was a movie, but I saw it on television. But I have to mention it, and not because it's on a lot of critics' list. I'm just talking about me personally
Yeah.
of a movie like Casablanca.
Hmm. Hmm.
What makes that so, and why I appreciate that film even more, because if you've ever attempted to make a film or write a film, you know how hard that a task that truly
Exactly.
is.
Yeah.
That, everybody thinks like one person wrote Casablanca. I think there were five writers on Casablanca. And
Hmm.
not only that, when they started shooting it, from what I understand, they didn't know how the movie was going to end.
Exactly. Right.
Um,
Yeah.
they so the fact that when you look at it now and you look at this cohesive thing that somehow came together, it is, and again, classic hero's journey. All of those elements in there, some of the classic lines in
Hmm.
dialogue. My favorite, of course, is when the inspector comes in and shuts the place
Hmm.
down for gambling. He says, "I am
Hmm.
shocked,
Yeah. Claude
shocked."
Rains. Yeah.
Yeah, Claude Rains is very like, "You're winning,
Yeah.
sir. Thank you." um, uh, just a classic line, things
Yeah.
like that. I really do. It's one of the things that, I don't care how many times I've seen it. If I happen to be flipping across the dial and it's on,
You got to stop.
it still
Yeah.
draws me
Yeah.
in, and I
I wish I,
watch it.
unfortunately, I wish I liked Casablanca as much as the general population. I know for me, for some reason, it never did it for me. But uh, going back to what I was saying about Star Wars was that other than opening my continuous love affair of cinema, how things are made, which I found absolutely fascinating because of that film and because of the documentaries that came afterwards on how it was made. It was an education for me, but it also opened up everything else for me when it came to film. All of a sudden, the films that were older than Star Wars, like Casablanca, or my Casablanca was always Citizen Kane. All of a
Mhm.
sudden, Citizen
Another
Kane
great
was
movie.
aha. Oh, that's how it's done. Oh, I see what he's trying to do. Oh, I understand her character, more. And it just blossomed after that. All of a sudden, everything just wide open. Just came wide open for me. And I, I have to, if I ever ran to George Lucas, I wouldn't thank him I wouldn't just thank him for just Star Wars, and everything. I would thank him for really helping me uh, have a passion for cinema, for film. He was the first one that did it for me. I have to be honest. Everything else, just like I said, everything else just came. Oh, I got that. Oh, all of a sudden now it's ever since then it's been like a smorgasbord for me. I just anything that's cinema, I just eat it up. Good and bad. I don't. I love bad films when they're trying to be bad and when they're not trying to be bad. I love film. I love film. I can find a love affair in any sort of film, no matter how cheaply it was made, no matter how expensive it was made, big stars, no stars. I love cinema. Cinema is just, my life.
Well, I'm going to hold you to it as we start releasing our films. I'm
I
going
will
to
be there.
remind you. So if you pan us, I'm going to say, I thought you loved all films, even bad ones.
That doesn't mean I don't critique them. A film I critique, I can find a passion in that's reasonable. If I let me tell you something about me and film. If I don't say a thing about film or your film or anybody's film, that you should be worried. At least for my attention. That means you mean nothing to me. You might as well be smoke to me.
That, I think, is the biggest lesson. I say this to the people I work with all the time.
Yeah,
The first commandment of entertainment is
yeah,
thou shalt not be bored. And
yes, yeah.
whether if I release something, and I've experienced that with the null hypothesis, we've had a
Mm.
range of reactions. Now, when it was a web series, that was the first thing that I did. Um, didn't have the first 4 episodes. I did everything myself.
Yeah.
So, the fifth episode was a jump because we had an actual crew, and again, I was still learning how to bring all of those elements
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
together
Yes.
to make a more professional thing. But the one thing I quickly knew, and I still remember some of the funniest comments that I had, about it though. But I was happy because indifference is what will kill you.
Yes.
I want you to either love it or hate it.
Yes.
Obviously, I would prefer you to love it, but at least you had a reaction.
Right.
You make
Yes.
content that has no reaction.
Right. Yeah.
That's something that's a problem because that means that it did not connect
Right.
with
Yeah.
you on any level. And
Right.
those are the films that, go into the dustbin of history and nobody ever looks at again.
Right.
So
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
that's not the content that I wanted to make.
It is not to me. There's nothing sadder than a film that just doesn't move me either way.
That just doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. That
Yeah.
that to me that's sad. That's like something that's soulless in a way. It's just matter. What I'm saying is it doesn't. It's just it's just images caught on emotion. What does it matter? It didn't do anything for me. What have you? You know, to me, you just said it. Film has got to release some sort of reaction to you, even for you. Even if it's I hated that picture. That if I was a filmmaker, I would love. I'm sorry, I would love to hear that. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but I'm serious. If it's my film and I made Piranha 8 in 3D, and people are filing out of the theater and say, "Oh my God, that was the worst film I ever." You hear that and you say, "Oh, God, they don't like it." But my God, they had some sort of reaction. If they all walked past me and they were talking about what they have to do on Monday morning, I would be floored. My head would I explode. That would hurt me more than anything else. Say you didn't like the film. Say the film bored the hell out of you. Say the film made your kid too scary to go in the water again, whatever. But to say, oh gee, oh God, I have to do laundry tomorrow. Leaving the theater? No, no, that would kill me. I'm sorry.
Definitely. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have experienced what it is like to be a part of our conversations. They normally go
Not
on longer,
really.
but well, no, not really. You've heard the PG version
The
of
PG
of our conversation because I do want this, to the widest version, widest
Mm.
audience possible.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
sadly, we are out of time, and
Um,
it was a great conversation.
it was.
Again, I hope that people will, for lovers of this art, I hope you find it entertaining. I hope it'll inspire you. Go out, go support your films in the theaters, and then watch
Absolutely.
it when it comes on streaming. especially if it's a story that speaks to you somehow. If you want to see more of them, please support those.
Right. Right. You
So
can't complain later on and say,
that's
well,
right.
where all the good films are at. Well, you got to
You
go
got to
out
go
there and support
support
that.
them when they
Yeah.
come out. And that's perfect. The origin, folks. Seriously. I'm going to show up at your house. If you don't go see that movie, I swear right now, you will never know a day of peace unless you go out and
Uh-huh.
see that movie. Okay, I'm going to
Mhm.
be checking. I'm going to be checking. I'm going to say I want a manifest of every ticket that was sold,
That's
and
it.
I want to know who went. And if you're not on that list, you're going to hear from me.
I'm coming to get you.
That's right. All right. So I'm going to sign off now. Thank you for listening to our podcast, and I will see you next time. Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.